So we're gonna get started. Chelsea and I are just gonna alternate going through some of the exercises or the rounds of exercise. So we have all the other weeks. So we're gonna line our backs. Adjust my camera a little bit. Line your back, knees at 90 degrees, arms in the air. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna stabilize your ribs, get your ribs down. You're gonna breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. So we're just gonna do 4 to 5 deep breaths. Every time you breathe out, think about bringing your ribs down. You don't want your back to be arched. You want it to be flat against the ground. When you breathe in, you want to feel like your rib cage is expanding into the floor. One more breath. Now staying in that position, you want to, again, anchor your ribs down. Hands are going to be in the air, knees are going to be at 90 degrees, and we're going to go into dead bugs. So to start, we're going to do the same side. So you're going to extend your arm out and your leg out. You only want to extend your leg out and your arm out so far as to keep your ribs down and to keep your back flat. So if you go too far and your back starts to arch, that's too much. So we'll do that for 30 seconds. You want to bring it in and out, or if you want to make it more challenging, you can extend your arm and your leg out and just hold it. Switch to the other side. You breathe in when you extend out, and out when you bring your leg and your knee back up. Good, and stop. Next, we're gonna do glute bridges. So to start, you're gonna have your feet on the ground. You want your toes in the air, if you can see my toes. And all we're gonna do to start is just squeeze your glutes and bring your glutes off the ground. You don't wanna be arching your back like this. It's not a back exercise, it's a glute and hamstring exercise. So just only go so far as to be able to keep your ribs down and activating your glutes. You can either hold it or you can go up and down.
Hey Siri, play 80s music.
What's that?
If you're on the call, can you please turn off your audio? And we'll just leave Sarah and my audio on.
Good. So now we're gonna come to our knees. We're gonna do a hip flexor stretch. You're gonna have one leg forward. The key here is a couple things. Let me adjust my thing. You don't want to be arching your back. You don't want to be bringing your leg forward too much. You want your leg. You want to be squeezing whatever knee is down. You want to be squeezing that glute, and you want your knee to be at 90 degrees. And all you're going to be doing is getting a hip flexor stretch here. So hold that for 30 seconds and then switch. Switch legs.
Think about almost tucking your tailbone under rather than arching at your back. This is not like a low back stretch here. This is a hip flexor stretch.
Yeah, and definitely squeezing your glute helps with that too. All right, we're gonna go back to the dead bugs. So everybody back on your back. This time you're gonna do opposite hand and opposite leg. So again, only go extend out so far as you're not arching your back or your ribs aren't coming up. If you wanna make it more challenging, you can hold it. Otherwise, just bring your leg in and out. But opposite arm and opposite leg. Breathe in when you come up, out when you go down. And switch. And stop. So this time we're gonna do another hip bridge, but we're gonna add in marching. So like before, toes are gonna be up, heels are gonna be on the ground. You're only gonna lift up without arching your back so much as your glutes will allow. And then just one at a time, you're gonna lift your leg. Do this for 60 seconds. The key here too with the marching is you don't want to have a lot of side to side movement. So you really want to be stabilizing with your hips and your core. And try not to let your hips drop. So one of the tendencies is when you start to lift your other leg, you drop your hips. But you want to keep your hips stable. "20 seconds. Okay, good. We're gonna go back to the kneeling hip flexor stretch. So again, You kind of want your pelvis tucked. You don't want to be arching your back. You don't want your knee to be coming forward. You want to be 90 degrees with the knee that's elevated, and just squeeze that butt cheek. If you want to add in a little bit of a side stretch, you can raise your arm on the knee that's down and stretch over to the side. And switch. I feel personally that the side bend, like if I've done a lot of cycling over the weekend, combined with like the glute contraction, it just is a great exercise for working on my kind of low back and obliques. Ten more seconds here. Good.
Awesome work. On circuit number 2. I feel that since is this our 5th week here?
Yep, this week.
5th week, yeah. So we're all pros now, and I think that we're ready to ramp it up. We're gonna do 60-second bear position holds and static movements today. Sarah is so stoked. If you feel like you're fatiguing during this, come down and take a break for 5 seconds, and then come back up and revisit the position. But we're gonna start here on our hands and knees, bringing your knees just slightly off the ground, rounding the back a little bit, engaging the core, and we're just gonna hang out here. Imagine that you're reaching the upper back towards the ceiling, but you're keeping your low back flat. Imagine that you are balancing a glass of water on your low back. Your core is so engaged, so solid, that you could put a full glass of water on your back and not spill it. Maybe in week 7, we'll try that. Great work, everyone. We are 40 seconds in, crushing it. If you want to add a little leg march, just lift your toes off the ground just a couple of inches, keeping that back still, no side-to-side lateral movement. Awesome work. Time. Nice job. Next, we're going to go into a side plank on our knees. This is a shoulder exercise and a core exercise. Coming up off the ground, think about keeping your hips forward. We don't want any collapsing, anything like that. Keep the hips forward, and let's add in a clamshell here. So heels together. This is working both glutes, which is really awesome. We're like double dipping here, working that glute med on the lower side, and then engaging the glute on the upper leg. Nice work.
Actually, thinking about squeezing your glute on the lower side helps too with that oblique engagement and helps you stabilize.
Great work. All right, switch sides. Coming up, really strong shoulder, engaging that lower glute. Heels
together. You don't want to be bent at the waist, right? So make sure that you have you don't want to be arched, but you want to have your hips in line with your knee and with your elbow. So if you find yourself going like this, just think about pushing your hips forward.
A great cue for this is keep your hips open. Our tendency is to collapse down, but if you can think about keeping your hips open, it'll help you keep them forward and engaged. Coming down. Now we're gonna go into our adductor rock back, my personal favorite. Our leg is to the side. Let's start with our foot on the ground, just flat on the ground. And we're gonna gently rock back and forth. I had a big weekend on my bike, so this one feels especially excellent.
You had your longest ride ever, right, Chelsea?
Longest ride ever, and according to my polar, the most vert I've ever done. So.
You did what, 125 miles?
125 miles, and I think what I'm most proud of is that at 122 miles, I went for a KOM. It was on a descent, but it was still a KOM. Great work. All right, switching sides now. Just easing back into this position. Don't push it here. You shouldn't feel any like burning, tearing sensations. We just want a nice stretch. And you'll find that after doing this for 20 or 30 seconds, you'll be able to get more range of motion through this. But don't force it here. Great work. Great work. All right. We are back to our bear position. And I think that we can handle another minute. Everyone looked pretty good to me, so let's see what we've got. Reaching that spine towards, upper back towards the ceiling, engaging the core, coming off the ground with your knees just an inch or two. And we're gonna start out, if you feel solid here, let's do some marching with our toes. Great work. Okay, now we're gonna put our hands together and we're gonna march our hands. Just bring them an inch or two off the ground.
Make sure you think about keeping those hips stabilized too. You don't want movement, right? You don't want to be rocking. You want to be stable.
The only thing moving here is your hands. And if you're feeling really spicy, lift opposite hand and toe off the ground. You're only owning this movement if you're not rocking at the hips. 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Woo! Good work, everyone. Back to our side plank now. On our knees. Strong shoulder. Pushing up off the ground. Remember, we're keeping those hips forward. And we're gonna go right into a clam. Great work. Remember to keep that lower glute engaged. Strong shoulder here. $15 more seconds here. Nice work. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Switching sides. shoulder engaged, pushing up through that lower hip into our clam. Think about pressing your hips forward, no collapsing. If you're starting to fatigue, just take a break from the clam. "15 seconds left here. Great work, everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming down and right into our adductor stretch.
If you guys recall, we're in the last core class with what Charlie was on. If you want, you can also rotate your, instead of going like this, you can rotate your heel up, your toes go up, and do it that way, and you get a little bit more hamstring. So whatever you feel comfortable with.
Feel free to mix it up between both foot positions so you can get your adductor and your hamstring. Great work. 15 more seconds here. Nice. Switching sides. Three, 2, 1. Great work.
Okay, so we're gonna advance from the bear a little bit and we're gonna go into a plank. So we're gonna do an R plank to begin. You don't wanna be sagging here. You don't wanna be in a pike like this. You want your tailbone tucked in a good position. So we're gonna try to hold this for 60 seconds. You can also, if you want, you can make your legs a little bit wider if that helps with stabilization, or more narrow, whatever you feel comfortable with. Again, as with the other exercises, if you still feel like you're starting to fade a little bit, you can take a break and then come back up. One thing with the plank is if you start to feel it in your low back, that's a sign that you're using your back more than your core. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Good job.
Nice.
So we're gonna go into a full side plank now. We're gonna start out with the feet staggered. So your top leg is gonna be forward, your bottom leg is gonna be back. You're gonna come up. You can either have your hand on your hip like this, or you can have it up. And again, you don't wanna be too far out. You don't wanna be piked like this. You want your shoulder and your hips and your feet to be aligned. If this is too challenging, you can go back to being on your knees and doing the clamshells. The other thing that is common, I was just doing it actually, is rotating forward like this. So you want to make sure that you stay with your shoulders open.
I like to think about reaching my hand towards the sky and keeping my chest really open here.
And again, squeezing that glute here is really helpful. We have 15 seconds left. You guys are doing great. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and switch.
Hips nice and open. Reaching your hand towards the sky if you can. If that's too challenging, bringing your hand to your hips or coming down onto your knees like we were doing in the last series is totally acceptable.
Good job, you're 30 seconds in. We have 15 seconds to go. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Great job. So we're gonna go into a cobra pose now. You're gonna be on your stomach. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can come up on your hands like so, or if that doesn't feel comfortable, you can do it down on your elbows. If you're up on your hands, if you walk them out, it gives you a little bit more space. If you walk them up, it's a little bit more aggressive. So just go into whatever feels comfortable with you. The one thing I would say is you don't want your shoulders to be scrunched like this. You want to draw them back. So it ends up helping extend your mid back. If you draw your shoulders up, it doesn't do that at all. So it stretches your core. You want to try to have your low back be as relaxed as possible, but by drawing your shoulders back, it also helps work your mid back.
This is not about finding like a pinching sensation. This should feel comfortably challenging, but it should not be painful. If it's painful or pinching, then come down to your elbows.
Five seconds. Good. So we're gonna go back to that plank position, but this time what we're gonna do is we're gonna march with our hands, similar to what we did previously with the bear. So you're gonna go back into that strong plank. The wider you set your legs, the more stabilization you're gonna get. So if you wanna challenge yourself a little bit more, then you can bring them more narrow. And all you're gonna do is just tap your shoulder. If this is too challenging, you can just stay in that plank position. You can even go down to your elbows if you need to. And the key here, again, is you don't want to see rotation. You don't want to see your hips swinging, right? You want to be completely stable and imagine that you're balancing a glass of water on your back. And you don't want to spill it. This is really good, I find, for hip stabilization with running and also with cycling, so that you're not shifting your hips around a lot when you're sitting on the saddle. Great job, we have 10 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good job. We're gonna go back to the side plank. This time, we're gonna do multiple variations, whatever you feel more comfortable with. If you can, stack your feet like so, versus having them staggered. And if you wanna make it harder, you can either hold it like that, or you can do repetitions. You don't wanna see a lot of movement here if you're doing repetitions or if you're holding. And if you're holding and you start to sag, you may wanna take a break. As Charlie mentioned, this is really good for running and hip stabilization. This is an exercise I have a really hard time with personally. We have 20 more seconds here. Five seconds. 4, 3, 2, and switch. One thing you can do too is if like you're just trying to progress into this, you could try to do, say, 5 repetitions and then take a break.
We want to be owning these movements. It's not about using momentum to kick your leg up. It's about controlling it. And so if you can just do 3 or 4 quality ones, that's better than doing 20.
You have 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. Great job. We're gonna go back into the cobra pose. I always try to think about pushing through my mid back versus my low back to really like press my chest out. We have 15 more seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2. Done. Great job, guys.
Great work, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Shameless plug, we'll be back on
Next week.
Friday.
Oh,
And we'll be back here at 9:30 next Monday for another fabulous edition of Core Club. And I think we're gonna like take it to the next level and mix it up. Perhaps.
we're gonna go rogue away from some of Charlie's exercises and teach you some new ones.
They'll still be in the spirit of excellence, but
Yes.
And if you haven't had enough of us, we'll be back at 9 a.m. on Friday for
Watt Bombs and Wonder Women.
which is our regular live talk show.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Have a really fabulous week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.